Hello and welcome to economics class. Today we are going to see the reasons why we study economics. But before then, let me try to redefine the concept or the discipline. Economics is seen as a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Based on this definition proposed by Professor Lord Robbins, it tries to analyze the behavior of human beings towards resources, how a human tries to satisfy his needs based on the available resources. There will be no time when resources will be in abundance to satisfy all human needs at once. But definitely, these resources will have to be used one after the other in times to satisfy human needs. Now, this is the first reason why that we study economics. It says that for identification of human needs and wants. But what can occur in your mind is that before the study of economics, does a human being be aware of his needs or wants? Yes, a human can be aware of his needs because a human is rational. But economics tries to shape our mind toward identifying which is necessary and which is not. Now, let me start with needs. A human should be rational enough to identify what is necessary for him at a time or at a particular time. Now, food. This is the first thing that a human will be aware of. He has to eat food for survival. Otherwise, he may die. Now, but which kind of food does a human need? This depends on his budget, or this depends on his income. If the person is earning a lot of income, so this will mean that he can eat a very delicious and good food. But otherwise, if the person is earning very less or low income, that person can only afford to buy a cheap good food. Now, for example, if the person is rich, he can afford to buy rice, even though even poor people are buying rice. But to what amount? You can see a poor person buying a cup of rice until after some time, then that person will buy another cup of rice. But a rich person will buy a different and a lot of rice and eat it from. Now, after rice, then we can have flour. You can argue with me that flour is being afforded by everybody, but to what amount? The amount being purchased by the rich and the poor is quite clear. A rich can buy a lot of flour, maybe a sack of flour, but a poor can only afford to buy a cup of flour. Now, this is about food. Now, apart from food, a human needs shelter, that is where to live. So that shelter can be a mansion, it can be an apartment, it can be just a duplex or a bungalow, depending on the income of that person. If the person is rich, he or she can afford a mansion depending on their level of income. But if the person is poor, he can afford to buy a small house or he can even rent a flat. So that depends on their income. So we have different kind of shelter. It can be mansion. It can be bungalow. And it can be duplex. So all these amount to a shelter of a human needs. Now, apart from shelter, then healthcare. Every human needs healthcare because at times we fall sick. So where do you expect to go and seek for medical attention? Is it a private hospital or is it a public hospital? This also depends on your income. If you look around your society, you'll find out that there are people that are going to private hospitals, not because there is no existence of public hospital, no. It's because They know that when they go to private hospitals, they will receive better medical attention. But this does not mean that I am criticizing public hospitals. No. But maybe the person doesn't want to engage in long queue before he is attended to by the doctor. So if that is the reason, he prefers to go to a private hospital where he will not find queues. Or maybe the person doesn't want to be placed or hospitalized in an environment where there are many patients. So this is another reason for him to go to a private hospital. So healthcare here can be a private hospital, or public. But all this depends on the income of the human. Now, apart from shelter or healthcare, then education. Every human needs to be educated, whether at a private school or at a public school. As I keep saying, the human will identify the necessity of getting educated, but where? At what school? This depends on their income. If the person is rich, I don't want this lesson to be boring to you. I keep repeating rich, 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 and poor. But I mean it. And I know you are aware of the difference between people or among the people you are living with. Now, if the person is living better or has a good well-being, can afford to have private education, the one delivered at private schools, or public education. But on the other hand, that public education is being delivered in public schools. That is where everyone can go. So that means even the rich can decide to go to the public. But why are they going to the private? They have their own reason. Maybe because at private schools, it is better taught than in public school. But as I said, I'm not criticizing public schools, but there is the need to make improvement in either way. Okay, having identified some of the needs of humans, then we can now try to see what are the wants. When we say want here, we mean the luxuries. That means the one that a human can live without. Number one, it can be a jet. So every human can live without a jet. I mean a private jet. So if you want to travel from your place of living to somewhere, you can afford even a public transport service, or you can own your vehicle, depending on your capacity. But at times, you may feel that you need to have a jet, a private jet. So this is merely considered to be a want, not a need, because you don't necessarily need it. But there are some people that they need private jet because of their social status. As we have seen, one of the international clerics that visited Nigeria recently, he came with his private jet. So because of his economic as well as social status, he needs it. So to him, it's a necessity. But to us, that private jet may just be a want. Then we have gold wristwatch. Definitely we need something that will keep reminding us about time. But what thing should we have? If we have normal watch, it's okay for us. But sometimes we will feel that, oh, maybe we have seen a celebrity wearing a gold wristwatch. So from there, we can develop a sense of liking it too. So to us, it can be a want. But to that celebrity, it can just be a show up or an advertisement, because there are some companies that are hiring celebrities to merchandise their goods. So to him, maybe he is not even wearing it, be going everywhere. Maybe you have just seen him in a video clip wearing it. So to us, a gold wristwatch is just a want. The necessity is to have a normal wristwatch that will keep reminding us about time. Now, another example of a want is gold necklace or ring. So from the name, you hear that gold, so it's something special. So people that are buying this, definitely is not for necessity. It's for what we call ostentation, just to show up, to show to the world how rich they are. But if you have a normal necklace and another person has a gold necklace, what is the difference? They are serving the same purpose. It's just for decoration, to show that yes, you are wearing something. So also the ring. So it doesn't mean we necessarily need a gold necklace or ring. It is just a want. So economics is trying to help us identify, differentiate between what we necessarily need and what we necessarily do not need. Now, having seen the first reason why we study economics, the second one is allocation of scarce resources. What do we mean by scarcity? It means that the limitation of a resource in satisfying our needs. So whenever we try to measure or compare our needs with the resource we need to satisfy this need, we'll find out that the resources are always limited to our needs. Now, for example, you have money. You have, let's say, 100,000. This is your balance. And from it, you can think of, oh, what can I do with that 100 naira? I need to buy a phone. I need to buy a clothes. I need to travel. So when you sit down, you will realize that you have a lot of needs if you compare it with the limited amount. So some of you can say, oh, that's 100 naira. Suppose I have 10 million, even if you have 1 billion. When you compare your needs with that resource, you will find out that always your need is greater than your resource. Now, with this 100,000 naira, you can do a lot of things. First, you can buy a phone. A simple one. It doesn't have to be an iPhone. You can buy an Android, but I will not mention the brand. For example, you can buy Android X, for example, at 30,000. This is enough because this 30,000 naira Android phone can do you a lot of things. But if you try to say, oh, I have seen my friend having an iPhone that is amounting to be 120,000 or 80,000 or 90,000, I have to buy it. So you have to ask yourself, do you have the same status as that friend? Do you have the same economic status as that friend? Or are you different? So from there, you can judge yourself. If you are not the same, don't even try to do that. That is the saying that cut your cloth according to your size. Now, with this 100,000, you can do a lot. I have just mentioned one thing, buying an Android phone. The second one, you can buy clothes, for example, at, let's say, 15,000. So from here, you can understand that you have spent 45,000 so far. So what is your balance? You have 55,000. But supposing that you bought that iPhone without considering your economic status, you will realize that you still need to buy clothes, but with what money? Maybe you will end up borrowing, which is a problem. Now, so far you have bought two things, and it cost you 45,000. Now, the next thing that may occur in your mind is to buy shoes. And this may amount to be 10,000 naira. So at the end, you will find out that you have spent 55,000 and you have 45,000 in your pocket. So here, you see that with that scarce resource, you have satisfied some needs. And at the same time, you have the balance of 55,000 naira. And that balance, when you keep it, definitely a need may arise without you knowing. That is in the future. So with that balance, you can use it to satisfy that need. Now, this 100,000, you can think of using it in different ways. That is why we say that the resource, after being scarce, it have alternative uses. I have just mentioned one example of buying things. So you can think of having different things other than the one that I have just listed. And with that scarce resources, you can think of many things with that 100,000 naira. So economics is trying to tell us how can we use our scarce resources to satisfy our need in the best